وبركاته. How is everyone doing this morning? Good? Alhamdulillah. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillahi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man walah. Inna alhamdulillahi nahmaduhu wa nasta'inuhu wa nastaghfiruhu wa nu'minu bihi wa natawakkalu alayhi wa na'udhu billahi min shururi anfusina wa min sayyiati a'malina. Innahu man yahdillahu fahuwa al-muhtadi wa man yudlil falan tajida lahu waliyan murshida. It is always a pleasure to be speaking about the Quran, to be meeting in the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to discuss the words of Allah. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as always with the Quran, to make us people of the Quran, to make us people who reflect on the Quran, who read the Quran, who recite the Quran, who understand the Quran, who share the Quran in the way that they walk, in the way that they talk, in the way that they decide, in the priorities that they make each and every single day. As you know, before we study any surah, we do a quick introduction to the surah. And the first question that we usually ask, name of the surah, where does the name come from? How is it relevant to the surah? Second question that we ask is when the surah is revealed, and any stories or context that will be relevant to the surah. And inshallah, we'll express or we'll discuss those things, inshallah, briefly at the beginning of the surah. And as we get to the specific ayat that highlight these meanings more specifically, we'll discuss and delve, inshallah, further. So the first question is Surat Al-Hadid, the name. If you look at the word hadid, of course it means iron. And we all know iron as a substance, and iron is mentioned 3 times in the Quran, or 3 different places. One of the mentions is in Surat Al-Kahf, and we know Surat Al-Kahf is revealed before Surat Al-Hadid, where Dhul Qarnayn says, Atuni zubar al-hadid. Give me iron so that I can construct a wall. And Surat Saba, we also hear the mention of al-hadid, the iron. And whenever you read the mufassirun, the majority of the mufassirun, they like to be very conservative in commentary, so they don't say too much that is not substantiated by clear evidence. So whenever, for example, you read the commentary on Surat Al-Hadid by the classical tafsir, when they delve into the name of the surah, they'll simply mention, and Surat Al-Hadid is called the surah of iron because iron is mentioned in the surah. That's true, iron is mentioned in the surah. But then the question to them and the question that we should all be asking is, well, iron is also mentioned in other surah of the Quran. Why isn't Surah Al-Kahf called Surah Al-Hadid? Why isn't Surah Saba called Surah Al-Hadid? Why this specific surah? And so here we leave the boundaries of tafsir specifically, because with tafsir you have to be conservative. You only say that which you know to be 100% true. And Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he taught the companions that whoever speaks about the Quran without knowledge, it's considered to be one of the major catastrophes. It's a big, again, sin in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So here we actually enter into the realm of tadabbur, the realm of personal reflections. And so some of the mufassirin, they include personal reflections in their works, but there's usually a methodological way that they separate between what is authentically found in the tradition and what is considered to be personal reflection or anecdotal insertions that we can benefit from, but we can't have jazm, absolute certainty that this is the intended meaning of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So among those personal reflections that some of the mufassirun have mentioned, they will say Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this surah is talking about iman, faith, and building a community of believers that is not like a community of hypocrites. أَلَمْ يَأْنِ لِلَّذِينَ آمَنُوا أَن تَخْشَعَ قُلُوبُهُمْ لِذِكْرِ اللَّهِ وَمَا نَزَلَ مِنَ الْحَقِّ. Has the time not already come? Is it not already now? You know, people say, not now. Inshallah, I'll believe, but not now, not today. So the question that comes, has today not come? Has the now that you're hoping for, because you keep saying not now, has the now come? Has it not already come? For you to believe and for your hearts to be trembling with awe and reverence when it comes to thinking about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it's talking about, and we'll see, spending in the path of Allah, really truly being a community of believers, not wavering, not being iffy, wishy-washy, not being half in, half out, ala hufra, not being on the edge. And what's that substance which usually is symbolic for fierceness and dedication and certainty and heaviness? It's a physically strong substance. So it's as if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is drawing a parallelism. Again, these are the anecdotal, reflective insertions of the Mufassirin. They would say it's as if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is drawing a parallelism between the way that Muslims should be with each other, the way that their iman should be, the way that their hearts should be. So their hearts are soft, like, again, you can imagine like clay, very, very soft, very, very sincere, very dedicated, very compassionate. But their actions should be fierce like iron. Their commitment and resilience should be like iron. So that balance between having this really soft heart where you cry when you hear the words of Allah, where your heart is receptive, right? It's ready to receive the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, ready to connect, not just to hear, but ready to actually listen attentively and clearly and to receive and to reflect. That's the softness of the heart. But the outside, the physical commitment to the tradition, to each other, to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, should be like that of iron. So that's personal reflection number one. Others will add a little bit further and they will say, look, this is actually a reference to what comes after. What comes after. So if you notice Surat Al-Hadid, there's going to be, again, a focus on building the community and defending the community. And in order for you to defend the community, you're going to need what? You're going to be resourceful in building a strong defensive army, in building a strong defensive military personnel. And usually, iron was considered to be a metaphor and closely linked with combat, closely linked with military, closely linked with being, again, strong militarily, defensively. So the other community or other communities who have reservations will be intimidated or will think twice before attacking you, or will think twice before, again, taking an offensive action towards you. So some have went as far as saying, look, it could actually be a reference to now, because we're in the 4th year of the Hijrah. So this is the question of when the surah is revealed. When the surah is revealed, 4 years after the Hijrah. So this means it's a Madani surah. And yes, there are a few ayat in the beginning that seem to be Meccan. So those could have been revealed in Mecca, but the majority of the surah seems to have, again, the features, looks like, and sounds like a very Medinan surah. Because we're talking about spending in the path of Allah, we're talking about hypocrisy, we're talking about after the Fath, and Fath obviously happens in Medina. So all of these features, they suggest this is a Madani surah, but the beginning of the surah talking about who Allah is, Al-Awwal, Al-Akhir, Al-Zahir, Al-Batin, all of these names and attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, these are usually names and attributes that you would see in a Meccan surah. So it combines between those two. Majority is perhaps Medinan in its features, with some at the beginning that may have been revealed in Mecca. And that's why some have said, like I was just saying, that many or maybe some parts of the surah are alluding to the fact that defensive and military offensive campaigns to protect the interests of the Muslim community would now become something that the Muslims have to stand up and commit to. And in order for them to do that, they need to have what? They need to have tough skin. They need to be like iron in the way that they commit to each other. They need to have really strong bonds. And they really need to have also resilience and strength and tenacity on the battlefield, and also equally strong equipment like iron to be able to withstand the difficulties and the challenges of what's to come. So that's Surat Al-Hadid as an introduction. So when is it revealed? It's revealed most likely in Medina, with some features in Mecca. Where's the name? Again, one of the main, if you're going to answer this simply, I would say the name is capturing this dual nature of the Muslim. The heart is soft, imagine very soft, trembles. Like Umar ibn al-Khattab, he had this beautiful heart. Whenever he would hear the words of Allah, he would cry. So hearts that are soft on the inside, but outside physically reliable, physically tenacious, physically resilient, physically strong. طيب, so that's the name, and that's the where, and that's the when. The next question that we would, inshallah, usually explore when we discuss a surah is the major themes, and we alluded to some. But we'll start, inshallah, one section at a time, reading the surah together, and inshallah reflecting on the major themes. The first ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, سبح لله ما في السماوات والأرض وهو العزيز الحكيم له ملك السماوات والأرض يحيي ويميت وهو على كل شيء قدير. We discussed before the meaning of sabbaha, yusabbihu, subhana, and it means to move. To move Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala far away from any human limitation, any imperfection, any human flaw. And that's a conceptual movement in your mind, in the way that you conceive Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Of course, you cannot imagine Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but you understand Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as a being. And that concept of the being, what does it mean? Where is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in relation to everything else? In connection with everything else? In relation with every other network in your mind, in your language, in your thematic conceptions, in your maps. So you're creating a map in your mind. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala moves on top of that map. Moves at the very epitome of any conception in your mind. And anything else that is limited in relation to that conception falls because it does not apply to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So what it means practically, when I think about subhanallah, and this comes to be clearer when we talk about al-awwal, al-akhir, al-zahir, al-batin, when I think about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in relation to sight. So in my mind there's this concept of sight. I see, you see, she sees, a camera captures a picture, a photo, other creations see. So yes, there's sight. Some have it, some don't. So I'm creating this conception in my mind of sight. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is what? Is the all-seeing. So He's the source of sight. Only through Him can sight happens. And only through Him can actual sight, insight plus sight, physical sight, can actually take place. Yet, at the same time, so that's what it means to move Allah to move Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ahead or at the top of any other conception. But then what's the second component of tasbih? Anything limited falls because it does not apply to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So for example, I cannot see all the time. Does that mean I'm going to superimpose that on Allah? No. I don't see all the time. When my eyes are closed, I can't see. Anything that's too far, I can't see. Anything that's behind me, I can't see. Anything that, is too small, I would need a microscope to see, and even beyond the microscope. Anything that is, perhaps that is quickly moving, it's moving too fast, I can't capture it, right? It's happening too fast. So all of these are limitations of my capacity, of my eye. But then all of these limitations drop, flaws drop from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's capacity. So He perceives everything at the same time, regardless of how fast it's moving, regardless of when and where in time and space it's happening. No limitations of time or space apply to Allah because He is the creator of time, physical time, temporal time, or physical space. So that's what tasbih means. Now notice here the verbiage here. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says sabbaha lillahi. Sabbaha. So notice when all of these surah begin with tasbih, they don't command you to do tasbih. Like none of these surah say sabbih lillah. Right? Do this, engage in this glorification of Allah. Engage in this exalting of Allah, honoring of Allah. It doesn't command you. Why? Because with a command you can say yes or no. You can choose to do it or not. But the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions it either in the past tense or either in the continuous present, the present tense. It is already happening. Yusabbihu lillahi, sabbaha lillahi, or subhana alladhi, far exalted. It's a continuous permanent quality of Him. So regardless of what you do it, whether you do it or not, regardless of whether you accept this reality or not, regardless of whether you come to that realization or not, Allah deserves it, it's already happening, and every other creation in some form or another is engaging in this glorification and tasbih and exalting of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Whether they know it or not, whether they've done it consciously or subconsciously, it's already happening. So the choice that you make is whether to be in synchrony with the universe or to break away from the synchrony of the universe and to make your own decision of saying, no, I choose to opt out. Now, what's amazing here is to add a further context. You'll notice that there's a section in the surah talking about spending. مَنْ ذَا الَّذِي يُقْرِضُ اللَّهَ قَرْضًا حَسَنًا. So some of the Mufassirin say when Allah talks about giving back a loan to Allah, we'll discuss that in the ayah further and break that down. They will say that this is a time in which the Muslim community is socio-economically struggling. So this could be actually as late as Jaysh al-Usra, Tabuk, the Battle of Tabuk. So they will put the map in terms of when the surah is actually revealed. Instead of the early 4 years, fourth year of Hijrah, they'll put it a little bit later, 8 years, 9 years. And the reason for that is because this is a time in which the community was really struggling financially and they needed to raise as much funds as possible to be able to deal with the growing needs of the community, defending the community against the Byzantines specifically. And that's related to the name of the surah being Al-Hadid, because you need to be militarily strong in order to be able to compete on that global scale against the Persians, against the Byzantines, which are at that time, yes, dying, but still reputationally strong global powers. So then the question is, when we are making a decision on day-to-day basis, oh, I'm struggling financially, economically, I need to hustle, I need to work, we need to. This concept of we need to, sometimes you can be so caught up in the mundane day-to-day, like the microcosm that you're in, that you forget that far above you, there's a heaven, there's a universe that exists. There are all of these celestial objects that exist. And all of these celestial objects, سَبَّحَ لِلَّهِ مَا فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ, they're existing in continuous tasbih, glorification, and honoring and exaltation or exalting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when I move, it's like, the image that I give you is, imagine you're stuck in your day-to-day, you're hustling towards your degree, and then all of a sudden you take a trip. So you fly out of Toronto and you look down from your plane and you look at Toronto like, subhanallah, my job, my this, my that. Like, Toronto's so small. It's such a small little place on the map. And then you move to another place. You move to another reality. And in that reality, like you land, for example, you go to Jeddah, you go to Mecca, you go to Medina. And you're like, subhanAllah, there's an entire different logic here. There's an entire different conception here. There's, just like there's me in my workplace hustling. There's a guy like that. He's going through these difficulties, these challenges. My challenges are not singular. There is actually a universe beyond my worries and my insecurities and my anxieties, right? So here you're not moving from one place to another place on the same earth. Allah is asking you, look up. Look up. Look at the bigger picture. Look at the bigger picture. Look at the stars. Look at the planets. Look at the universe. And as you see these planets moving, as you see these planets rotating, that is a form of glorifying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because in that movement, that is them submitting to Allah. Because who set that code into being? What pattern are they following? Who set that formula? That's the form of tasbih, because what is tasbih? Glorifying. I choose, I accept your commandment to me. I accept the power that you have over me. I follow the trajectory that you set and the expectations you've paved for me. That's a form of tasbih. So here you are in your day-to-day, worried about X, Y, Z, worried about, meeting your bills, worried about your next meal, worried about the kids' educational plan, the RRSPs and the retirement, this and that. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, zoom out and remember, everything that's in the universe is perpetually, in the present, in the future, in the past, engages in this tasbih. So what does that do immediately to me? When I connect to Him who's above all of that, my worries become what? Become no longer crippling. Oh, someone, I have $10,000 of loans. Have you ever been to somebody and they just have this amazing way of calming you? I have $10,000 of loans. I have $50,000 of loans. Some people, what they do is, oh my God, you're doomed. How are you ever going to come out of that? That's it, you're done. Versus somebody else, yeah, it's okay. You got this, it's fine. There's a way, inshallah. I know a lot of it. That's nothing, man, compared to, right? So when you move far away and you zoom out, you realize that your worries and anxieties and stresses and goals and desires are, we don't want to say they're insignificant. They're significant to us. But relatively, they're what? You can reduce them in the way that they're perceived in your mind, in your heart, when you are connecting with them through the prism and the magnifying glass, that's tasbih, of who Allah is. You magnify Allah, you glorify Allah, and His capacity, His ability, everything else becomes what? Becomes small. Everything else becomes what? Becomes tangibly attainable. No longer crippling. That's tasbih. Can you imagine we did that? Now, what has tasbih come to be for us? Subhanallah, 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 subhanallah. There's this image in the Middle East of like the two drug dealers talking to each other. They're signing the drug deal, agreeing, okay, so the product is going to come through this port, 500 million Egyptian pounds. I mean, Egyptian pounds, because I'm Egyptian. Doesn't mean, don't assume, right? And as they're both talking, they have the little sibhas in their hands. Subhanallah, subhanallah. So yeah, when is the product coming? January 4th? Subhanallah, subhanallah, subhanallah. Let's sign the deal. Subhanallah, Allahu Akbar, Allah has been great. Allah has been great. It actually happens. It's a trope, right? Egyptian media plays on this trope. Now, in doing so, they want to present a bad image of Islam and Muslims. That does something, right? The image of the untrustworthy businessman who does, yes, donates this and this and that, but it's very artificial. But at the same time, it also captures a reality that exists on the ground. So it does capture a reality that exists on the ground. By magnifying and bringing attention to it, it does something else psychologically for the rest of us, is that it begins to, or makes us look suspiciously to each other and people of faith. And that reduces the communal trust. It reduces that loyalty to the tradition in a way. So think about the duality. It captures a small reality that might exist on the ground, but it brings attention to it, that magnification, right? So here, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, what should be brought attention to, what should be magnified, what you should be thinking about constantly, what should be glorified in your mind, is Allah's capacity, Allah's existence above all of these things. وَهُوَ الْعَزِيزُ, He's the what? He's the highest authority. وَهُوَ الْعَزِيزُ الْحَكِيمُ, the most wise. So when we hear these names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He's the highest authority, the most majestic. What is that? What's the question that we should be asking? So is there any other authority that I should be scared of? That I should be intimidated by? No. It doesn't mean you become rebellious. It's like the trope of like, I bow down to nobody. I'm free. Forget the CRA. I'm not going to pay taxes. I'm free. I'm a Muslim. That's not the intention, right? That's not what it means. Unfortunately, some people have taken it to that, and it's a very misplaced form of submission and glorification of Allah. It just means I'm going to do the best that I can. I'm going to do things right, but I'm not going to be scared of anyone. I'm not going to be intimidated by any power. I can meet, as a Muslim who's actually fully immersed in your Islam and your faith, you can meet Donald Trump tomorrow. You can meet Biden tomorrow. You can meet this person or that person, and you can look to them face to face, eye to eye, and not be intimidated by their power. Not be scared by their presence. Right? Doesn't mean you're not respectful. You respect a person's position, right? But it means you can also be critical. Right? It means you're not fearful. You're not worried. You're not anxious. So izzah belongs to Allah. And it means if I'm connected to the one who's above all of these beings and entities, my dreams, my ambitions, my visions, my goals are no longer small. They're large. Why? Because I'm no longer thinking in small scale. I am connected to the Aziz. I'm connected to the highest authority. You know the idea of like, do you know who I am? Do you know what? Do you know who I know? Do you know who I am? Do you know who I know? We always like to, we're dropping names. You know the idea of people dropping names. You know, I know this guy. I was in a conversation with this guy. The Muslim doesn't do that. The Muslim has that in their heart. It's like as they're meeting with someone who's powerful or XYZ, deep inside they're like, do you know who I was with last night? I was with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I was talking to Allah. I was venting to Allah. I was reciting the words of Allah. That reassurance grounds you and it empowers you. So it's not arrogant. It's not like, oh, I'm a righteous slave of, I'm so good. I pray so much. Don't mess with me, because that self-righteousness is one of the deadliest sins. It'll take you to one of the worst places you can, beyond your imagination. So it's this idea of genuine, comfortable peace and being really at ease with yourself and who you are, knowing you're connected to Al-Aziz. And then Al-Hakim, the most wise. What is the question that we should ask then when we hear He's the most wise? Do you trust His wisdom? Do you trust His plan? So you're looking at what's happening in Palestine, it doesn't make sense. Sure, parts of it definitely don't make sense. But do I trust the plan of Allah? Yes, I do. Can I make sense of it when I sit down and think about it? Yeah, in many ways, and we've done that as an exercise. What do you expect? You have all the resources around you, but you're not uniting. You have all the resources around you, but you're not advocating. There's no true internal communal solidarity that needs to be there. The criteria and the preconditions that Allah has set, we have not met them. So how do we expect Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to intervene when we ourselves have not done our part of the intervention? But do I trust Allah's plan? Yes. Do I trust that if I do the best that I can and work towards what I can as a Muslim to help genuinely and to give back, that there will eventually be, some form of peace in that region? Yes, I do. One day, in the capacity of Allah. Because if I trust human planning, it's never going to happen. But because I trust in the planning of Allah, I know for sure, certainly, it will happen. Then the next ayah, له ملك السماوات والأرض. So you can say, oh, someone or something might glorify Allah, but does that mean Allah is in control? So Allah echoes this same meaning in a different way. Not only is everything glorifying Him, but له ملك السماوات والأرض. He possesses, He owns. He is the owner of everything in the heavens and the earth. Just sit today with yourself and repeat this ayah as many times as you can and just reflect on it. له ملك السماوات والأرض. له ملك السماوات والأرض. له ملك السماوات والأرض. Everything in the heavens, everything in the earth, He owns. He owns. So when you think about subhanallah, oh, this person is a billionaire, this person is a trillionaire, this institution is so what? Oh, look how much money is being poured into Islamophobic agendas. Our budgets are so limited. We can never keep up. We can never... What are you talking about? What budget are we talking about? Are you talking about your budget? It's not going to happen. But I'm talking about who? The budget of Allah. له ملك السماوات والأرض. Do you see how that translates into day-to-day actual realities? That's how you move Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Again, into, or that glorification, moving Allah away from any limitation and moving Allah to be the first, the highest, the one that you think about, the one that you know everything and everyone depends on, but depends on no one, that will have direct impact on every decision that you make if that iman is active, if that faith, iman, is conscious. Yuhyi wa yumit. Yuhyi wa yumit. You can hold the corpse of your baby, and it's sad because you're reflecting on all the beautiful moments that you shared. The words, the cries, the tears, the laugh. The laugh will always echo in your mind. You'll never be able to erase that laugh from your memory, but when you recite Yuhyi wa yumit, Allah is the one who brings life, and He's the one who caused it to cease to exist. Yuhyi wa yumit. Every process that comes to be, it's only through Him. Every process that ends, every reaction, every counter reaction that begins, anything that starts or ends, it's only through Allah. وَهُوَ عَلَى كُلِّ شَيْءٍ قَدِيرٌ. It's not just life and death, it's not just ownership or kingship. Anything that you can imagine, He is capable of allowing it to be or allowing it not to be. It's not just life or the absence of life, death. It's every process in your life. What does this mean? What does this mean? This means that I understand and recognize that everything is supposed to teach me something in relationship to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So for example, I've been trying to get married for the last 4 years. Nothing is working out. Why is it not working out? So remember, yuhyi wa yumit wa huwa ala kulli shay'in qadir. Every process, every conversation that I entered for marriage didn't work out. It died for a reason. Allah has allowed it to die for a reason. What is that reason? What is Allah teaching me? What is Allah asking me to reflect about inside me? Is there a limitation or a flaw that I need to overcome? Is there a place in my life where I'm dishonest or has not been cooked well? Or is Allah teaching me to be patient in the through the process? Am I coming in with too much entitlement? Or is Allah redirecting me to something else? Maybe in this part of my life, if I do get married, I'm going to be kind of focused so much on that, and there's blessing in that, but maybe my energy and my efforts are needed what? Needed elsewhere. Maybe I'm supposed to build something else first. Maybe I wouldn't be able to attend these classes if I was married. Maybe I wouldn't be able to travel to this place if I... Maybe there's so many maybes. But what being connected to Allah does to you is it makes you complete, like it strips you away from the anxieties. Allah knows best. And it equips you productively with the action to keep going in a positive direction. It's possible. So why is it not working? There's a reason. And I trust Allah's wisdom. So I'm not going to delve too much on that. But what I do know about Allah is He rewards action. He rewards pursuit. And in Arabic we say al-haraka baraka. Movement leads to blessing. You can't just sit there and ask for blessing. You gotta what? You gotta move. You gotta hustle. You gotta knock on doors. So I'm gonna keep knocking on doors. I'm gonna keep going. I'm gonna keep moving. I'm not gonna sit there and be crippled by my situation. I'm gonna keep moving. And I'm giving this as an example because I know that like the audience that we're speaking to, this is a conversation that we think about. But anything else? Why is the business not working out? Why didn't I get this job? Why didn't I get this position? Why didn't I get this promotion? Why didn't we close this house? Why? All other whys, same logic applies. Then the next, by the way, Ibn Abbas and others, just to reflect subhanallah on these ayat, Ibn Kathir in his tafsir, I believe he mentions that these beginnings of Surat Al-Hadid, they contain meanings that are better than 1,000 other reflective opportunities. Meaning that if you think about these ayat, you will come to know Allah better than if you were to think about 1,000 other things. And that's why there's a weak hadith. It's a weak hadith that says the Prophet ﷺ used to recite the All the surah that begin with tasbih, subhana, sabbaha, the tasbih surah, we did one of them, right? Taghabun. All of these surah, he used to recite them before going to sleep. It's a weak hadith, but some have acted upon it, especially Surat Al-Hadid, because what? Because it contains these beautiful opportunities for reflection. Others like Ibn Abbas, subhanallah, it's actually a beautiful story with Ibn Abbas. He was talking to one of his students, and one of his students was gazing or looking in the distance, looking a bit unsettled. Could have been Mujahid, Muqatil, I don't remember the name exactly now. But one of the students was having a moment of reflection. So he looked at him, Ibn Abbas looked at him and said, "What's wrong?" "I don't want to talk about it." No, tell me what's going on. You seem to be, overwhelmed. He says, "Look, there are..." So I don't want to talk about it. So he says to him, "Perhaps there's something that we have been discussing about the Quran or about Allah that still you couldn't wrap your mind around. You're not able to grasp it yet, so it's causing you a little bit of doubt. You're having a moment of doubtfulness. And a good teacher can read you without you having to say anything." So his student doesn't confirm because he doesn't want to admit that he's having a doubtful moment. You don't want to do that to anyone. It's between you and Allah. So what does he do? He laughs. So then Ibn Abbas, he understands that he doesn't want to, again, infringe upon his right to privacy. So what he does, he says, "Look, I'll give you a solution. I want you to read the 3rd ayah of Surat Al-Hadid. Read it over and over and over again." This is the ayah that we're just going to talk about now, because this ayah will bring your heart to ease. And some of the other mufassirun, they mentioned that in the beginning of Surat Al-Hadid, there's so much to reflect on that these meanings will take you to what's considered to be the greatest name of Allah, Ismullah al-A'zam. The greatest meaning, some say the greatest name of Allah, it's an actual name, and some say that it's a combination of names that if you actualize in your mind, your dua is answered. And that's why many of those who make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they will begin by saying, "I make dua to you, Ya Allah, the one who possesses the heavens and the earth, the one who's Aziz, Hakim, the one who has this kingdom, this ownership, the one who's Al-Awwal, Al-Akhir, Al-Zahir, Al-Batin, وَهُوَ بِكُلِّ شَيْءٍ عَلِيمٌ." And then you make your dua. Why? Because these, again, are significant meanings if you understand them. So let's understand them together. هُوَ الْأَوَّلُ, He is the first. وَالْآخِرُ, He is the last. وَالظَّاهِرُ, He is the, you can imagine, the most manifest. وَالْبَاطِنُ, and He is the most deep, the most near. And we'll explain what they mean. So let's start with the first. هو الأول. The first, obviously, the first of any creation, or the first cause of any creation. The first cause of any creation. He's the first cause in any process. He's the first one that I think about when I wake up in the morning. He's the first that I thank when something good happens. He's the first that I attribute success to. He's the first that I think about in a moment of sadness. He's the first that I turn to in a moment of weakness. He's the first that I think about in a moment of desperation. The first. So the first in an aspect of, imagine, the first to set time into motion. The first to set physical space into being. Al-Awwalu. Wal-Akhiru. Wal-Akhir, what does that mean? Al-Akhiru, He is the last. So the last part of my day, I spend thinking about Allah in a personal manner. The last goal, the ultimate vision. So imagine you have a series of steps. What's your last step? To be with Allah. He's the last. Everything is going to that direction. Everything will cease to exist, but He will be there. Eternally existent. The last. The last. So He is the last resort when all other resorts fall through. He is the last source of hope when all other hopes melt away. He's the last refuge, the last form of love, the last that will give up on you, the last that will never lose hope in you. So al-akhiru, all of these meanings. And again, everything in between. So al-awwal wal-akhiru, wal-zahiru, the manifest. He's the most obvious. You look at a flower, you see Allah's work. Everything in its manifest will speak about Allah. So you hold your baby for the first time, the most immediate thought that comes to mind, Allah, Allahu Akbar. Right? So He's the most manifest. Everything around you speaks of Allah, the power of Allah. Yeah, so the most obvious, the most manifest, the clearest of realities. But at the same time, al-batinu. Like, I don't want to say the world's best kept secret or the universe's best kept secret, because Allah is beyond the world and the universe. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the best kept secret. Al-batin, the deepest secret. Because no one can tell that you're a true believer in connection with Allah. It's something that is so deep within you that nobody can see it. It's such a deep reality, no one can extract it. It's such a secret relationship that nobody can actually actualize it out of you. And that's what makes it really special. So Allah is the nearest to you. Al-batin. Imagine these dualities that no one else is able to achieve. He can be the most obvious to everyone and to everything, but at the same time, He's deeply personal, deeply private between you and Him. Think about وَنَحْنُ أَقْرَبُ إِلَيْهِ مِنْ حَبْلِ الْوَرِيدِ. Allah is nearer to you than your own jugular vein. Think about what that means. That Allah, وَهُوَ مَعَكُمْ أَيْنَمَا كُنْتُمْ. Right? He's with you, ever present wherever you are. إِنِّي مَعَكُمَا أَسْمَعُ وَأَرَى. I am with you, I hear and I see. So He's ever present. You know when you make the dua before you travel, أللهم أنت الصاحب في السفر والخليفة في الأهل والمال والولد. You are the companion, my companion on this journey, but you're my protector at the same time over the family that I leave behind. So how can Allah be the one that is with you on the journey, but at the same time protecting you? Because that's who Allah is. Right? So He's the most manifest, the most obvious element in the universe, but at the same time, He's the most deeply, I don't want to use the word esoteric, right? But deeply what? Deeply hidden. No one can access Him except through His knowledge. No one can connect with Him except through His permission. Then you need to have this deep, private relationship in order to what? To begin approaching Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that place where you connect with Allah, your heart, no one can see it, which makes it what? Which makes it a deeply private part that no one else can what? Really judge or assess. Your iman, yes, I can judge based on action, but there could be 1,000 things motivating the action. Yes, you're coming to the masjid every fajr. Sure, that could mean that your iman is really high, but it could also mean that you're really interested in showing up because the future spouse or the future father or the father of your future wife is there. So you're trying to impress him. I don't know. No one knows. Only you know. It's deeply private. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in your relationship with Him, is deeply private, which means He is deeply private. Right? Deeply hidden. So هو الأول والآخر والظاهر والباطن وهو بكل شيء عليم, and He has perfect knowledge of all things. Now, let's continue reading together and reflect on the meanings as we recite them. هو الذي خلق السماوات والأرض في 6 أيام ثم استوى على العرش يعلم ما يلج في الأرض وما يخرج منها وما ينزل من السماء وما يعرج فيها وهو معكم أينما كنتم والله بما تعملون بصير. هو الذي خلق السماوات والأرض في 6 أيام. It is He who created the heavens, everything above us, والأرض, everything under us, beneath us, in 6 days, in 6 phases, in 6 stages. Allah can say kun fayakun, be and it is. But one of the ways that Allah creates is also by setting in motion certain processes of creation. And in that is a reminder for us not to feel bad about what? About strategic step-by-step development. Because if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created everything, boom, be and it was, then in our minds, we would not have this concept of what? We would be very focused on immediate gratification, immediately achieving our goals. But we see the baby develop 9 months in the womb. So much effort, and then being breastfed for this, and then so development requires staging, and it requires stages, and it requires patience. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, some of the scholars say, out of His wisdom, He set an out of expression of His majesty. Imagine the first cause, and then Allah through that allows the universe to erupt, to begin. ثم استوى على العرش. And He's established Himself to express His authority upon the arsh. And some will translate, subhanallah, the arsh as the throne. And others will hesitate to translate the arsh as the throne. Because even the concept of a throne is human. It captures this idea of a physical sitting or a physical... No, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not limited by that. So yes, He's established Himself upon the throne. But it's not the way that a king would know. وَالْعِيَاذُ بِاللَّهِ. We don't do tashbih. لَيْسَ كَمِثْلِهِ شَيْءٍ. We don't imagine Allah to be a physical entity. No, Allah's beyond that. So He's established Himself upon, and some of the, I would say, the more conservative, without again being politically associated with the word, the more cautious interpreters of the Quran, they will not translate the word arsh. They will just simply say He's established Himself upon the arsh. And you want to read what the arsh is? You go to the books of Aqidah, the books of theology. They will describe this arsh as bigger than anything else that you can imagine in the observable and non-observable universe. So I want you to imagine the whole universe, including the part of the universe which is beyond our capacity to see. It's expanding for our capacity to see. Everything that's in all of that, the entire universe, and beyond 7 heavens, the arsh is greater than all of that. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala established Himself upon that as a form of authority. Like that's where the actual control manifests. You want to see the control of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? You will eventually see it on the day that you meet Him. You see that reality beyond our capacity to imagine. But in the immediate term, far away from all of that, يَعْلَمُ مَا يَلِجُ فِي الْأَرْضِ. Whatever goes into the earth, falls into the earth, وَمَا يَعْرُجُ مِنْهَا, and whatever comes out of it, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is aware of it. So I want you to imagine a small little seed erupting out of the ground, Allah is aware of it. A small little particle evaporating of water, becoming gas, Allah is aware of it. Because all of that happens what? Through processes that Allah has set in motion. So it's through the code of Allah that all of this happens. So Allah is aware of every single process. You know, when you saw the snowfall, I want you to imagine every little flurry of snow, right? Every little particle of snow, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is what? Is aware of it. Like let that sink in. As it falls on your skin and it touches your skin, a beautiful dua that you make in that moment. Imagine, Ya Allah, you know where this flurry has fallen, where this small little particle has fallen. And as it has fallen on my face, Ya Allah, allow the nur of Iman to also fall on my face. As it fell into the ground, allow the nur, your guidance, your light to fall into my heart. See, that's what it means. That's what the reality and awareness of Allah being ultimately in control, that's what it translates into in the way they interact with Allah. Right? So whatever comes out of the ground, whatever moves above, whatever flies out of the, or imagine, ascends out of even the atmosphere, the stratosphere, wherever, going, coming, all of it, Allah is aware of it. وَهُوَ مَعَكُمْ أَيْنَمَا كُنْتُمْ وَاللَّهُ بِمَا تَعْمَلُونَ بَصِيرٌ. And He is with you wherever you are, and Allah is absolutely, fully seeing of whatever you do. Now, okay, some of you might say, I get it. Okay, I get it. Okay, I get it. But what does Allah do in the fifth ayah? He repeats it again. He says, لَهُ مُلْكُ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ وَإِلَى اللَّهِ تُرْجَعُ الْأُمُورِ. When do you repeat yourself word for word again? Imagine as a mother or as a father, you're talking to your son, you're talking to your daughter. And you say something. And they're like, yeah, okay. No. Listen. Let me say it again. Let me repeat it. I get it. No, you don't. No, you don't. You know, like, imagine a recent story. I'm going to summarize. You send somebody to do something for you, and you tell them, look, be very, very gentle with this person. He really requires a lot of sensitive attention. Yeah, okay. No. Just be very, very gentle. He requires a lot of sensitive attention. No, you don't. I'm going to say one more time. So I want this to stick with you. Like I really want you to understand the gravity of this. So here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that, He's saying that. You think you get it. You think you've heard it. You think you've understood it. Let me say it to you again. لَهُ مُلْكُ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. To Him belongs the kingdoms of the heavens and the earth. وَإِلَى اللَّهِ تُرْجَعُ الْأُمُورِ. And to Allah, all matters eventually return. All disputes go back to Allah. All infringements, all infractions, all bullying, all injustices, all victories, all successes, all stories, all records, all audits, all assumptions, all actions, all judgments, all reservations, they eventually what? They eventually go back to Allah. Okay, you think you get it? No. Let me repeat it to you again. In a different way. Let me say it to you again. يُولِجُ اللَّيْلَ فِي النَّهَارِ وَيُولِجُ النَّهَارَ فِي اللَّيْلِ وَهُوَ عَلِيمٌ بِذَاتِ الصُّدُورِ. He's the one who causes the day to merge into the night and the night to merge into the day. He makes you realize, experience day and night. It's only through Him that is possible. And He knows what is deeply hidden in your heart. Your deepest thoughts, your deepest secrets, your deepest worries, the things that you cannot say to anyone, the things that you take with yourself to the grave. He is your companion in that. He is your confidant in that. طيب. I get it. Do you though? You say you get it. So next time that you're in a dispute and it's really getting tense and you're there, you just don't want to give up. You don't want, it's the argument has reached the deadlock position. It's not going anywhere. Do you remember in that moment the words of the Prophet ﷺ? I guarantee a house in the middle of Jannah for the person who leaves an argument, even if they're right. So do you say, you know what? I appreciate it. You know, I value the relationship with you more than I value the argument. Let it be. Do you just bring it to an end? Because you know, all arguments eventually go back to Allah. Someone steals something from you. And yes, It might not even be about the value. You're like, I don't even need the money. It's just the disrespect. Like, really? You do that? Eye to eye? Like, you promise anybody? How dare you? Oh, I'm not going to let it go. Khalas, now you become hyper-focused. You spend days and nights thinking about how you're going to get your... It's not even about getting your money back anymore. It's about what? It's about getting your dignity back. Oh, just wait what I'm going to do. Tab ya ammi. All disputes eventually go back to Allah. Khalas, let it go. You sit there like, you know what? It's okay. Allah will deal with him. Or you know what? A step better than that, it doesn't matter. I'm not gonna do it for myself. I know Allah is much better at giving, at rewarding. And you know, Ya Allah, someone like him going through something like that, I don't even want to add to the person's burdens by, making dua against them. Ya Allah, I forgive them. And I make dua, Ya Allah, guide them, because they definitely are going through something where they need definitely guidance. And in doing so, Ya Allah, I hope I'm sincere enough, because I'm looking for your forgiveness and your guidance. I don't care about the little date. No, my goal, my focus on something much bigger, much better. And that is you, Allah. So I'm okay to let this go. And I'm okay to let the amount go. I'm okay to let the ego go. I'm okay to let the anger go and the frustration go and all of that go. Because I'm focused on you. I know that if I let that part of my ego go, I know you will give me honor in ways that I cannot imagine. If I let that amount go, I know you're going to give me something much better. And I'm not doing it simply for the compensation from you, because it's not just about that. I'm doing it for the connection and the relationship with you, because that's more important than anything else. The connection. I'm hoping that letting go of this demonstrates that I am looking to fill any void, any gap, any loss in me through you and only you. That's Iman. So he knows what's deeply within my chest, within my heart, my thoughts, my imagination. He's fully aware. So then, where is the command? After all of this, remember, Allah's talking to a community of believers and a community that has some hypocrites in Medina. He's talking to a community with the Prophet ﷺ. And what's the command? Listen to the beautiful command. آمنوا بالله ورسوله. Believe in Allah and the Messenger. Truly believe. Don't be like the iron in your submission, your commitment, your focus. وأنفقوا, and spend. مما جعلكم مستخلفين فيه. And spend from what He has entrusted you with. He's giving this to you, but eventually it's going to go what? It's going to go back to Him. Because He's the last. The last, all deposits, all payments, all efforts, all givings eventually go to Allah. Your house, your wealth, you eventually die. Every human being dies. Who inherits all of that? Allah, the final inheritor of everything and anything and all things, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So, the command after all that, after you know He's the beginning and the end, the most manifest, the most private, the deepest, the most subtle, the most apparent, the source of all. After having said and heard and recited all of that, you truly, the implication, the outcome, the natural outcome of that, آمنوا بالله ورسوله. Believe in Allah and the Messenger. And give from what He has entrusted you with. فَالَّذِينَ آمَنُوا مِنكُمْ وَأَنفَقُوا لَهُمْ أَجْرٌ كَبِيرٌ. The ones who believe amongst you and give, those are the ones that are going to get what? A mighty reward with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Kabir, a big reward. So when Allah says big reward, what have we been imagining? Celestial bodies. So when we talk about big reward from Allah, I want you to think about cosmic significance, cosmic magnitude, cosmic units of measurements. Right? Where Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said the last person that enters Jannah is going to get a kingdom that the biggest king in this dunya could only dream of. The last person to enter Jannah gets a better kingdom, a bigger kingdom than the most powerful human being that ever existed. So we're talking about reward with Allah in cosmic significance, like cosmic units. We're not talking about dollars. We're not talking about rupees. We're not talking about al-Guinea al-Masri. We're not talking about those currencies. That's not what we're talking about. We're not talking about the lira. We're not talking about gold. We're not talking about silver. We're talking about the currency of the one who created all of the things through which we derive value, the source of all value. We're talking about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when He says big, it's a mighty reward. It's not in your definition of big, it's in His conception of greatness. Allahu Akbar. Yani, just think about that. Think about what that does to you. And what does it mean to give? And we said this many times, to give from your energy, from your patience, from your knowledge, from your wisdom, from your expertise, to give from your love, to give from your time, to give from your money, to give from everything that Allah has given you. لَن تَنَالُوا الْبِرَّ حَتَّى تُنْفِقُوا مِمَّا تُحِبُّونَ. You're not going to attain piety until you give righteousness, until you give Jannah, until you give out of what you love. So find the thing that you love the most, the thing that you're really, really passionate about. Because when you're passionate about something and you love something, you're good at it. You spend a lot of time working it out in your mind. So you become an expert in that, or you're deeply attached to that. So find the thing that you're really, really good at and give from that. And find the thing that you're really, really attached to and give from that. Because that's an expression of what? Ya Allah, I love this thing so much. I value this thing. I'm attached to this thing so much. But I'm attached to you more. I desire you more. So keep that in mind. وَمَا لَكُمْ لَا تُؤْمِنُونَ بِاللَّهِ. And how is it that you have not already believed in Allah? وَالرَّسُولُ يَدْعُوكُمْ لِتُؤْمِنُوا بِرَبِّكُمْ. When your messenger continuously invites you through his actions, through his existence, through his lived experience, through his words, he invites you to believe in the Lord. So you might say, well, yeah, I want to believe in Allah, but I don't know how to. How do I believe in Allah? What do I got to say? I believe in you. No. You look at what the Prophet did. You want to know what it means to believe in Allah? Because somebody will say, I really believe in Allah. I sit at home at night and I have this really nice ritual where I say the name of God like 20 times, count my blessings, and that's my way of expressing gratitude. Affirming the existence and the power and the majesty and the love of the divine. MashaAllah, tabarakallah, wonderful. But you cannot say you believe. So وَمَا لَكُمْ لَا تُؤْمِنُونَ بِاللَّهِ وَالرَّسُولِ يَدْعُوكُمْ لِتُؤْمِنُوا بِرَبِّكُمْ وَقَدْ أَخَذَ مِيثَاقَكُمْ إِن كُنْتُم مُؤْمِنِينَ. And He, your messenger, gives you the lived experience, and He's taken a promise from you if you're truly believers, that you follow Him. When do we take the promise? When we say, أَشْهَدُ أَن لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا اللَّهِ وَأَشْهَدُ أَنَّ مُحَمَّدًا رَسُولُ اللَّهِ. That's your shahada. That's the first step as a Muslim. That's your promise to Allah. I will follow you. And your promise to Rasulullah to do as he did as a manner of expressing your love and commitment to Allah. Or وَقَدْ أَخَذَ مِيثَاقَكُمْ. He took your oath. Allah took your oath when you did the shahada. And Allah took your oath even in the pre-world, before we're all created. The souls, as Allah mentions in Surat Al-A'raf, right? أَلَسْتُ بِرَبِّكُمْ. When Allah took an oath from all of the souls created, am I not your Lord? So even before the soul entered the physical realm and became a soul with the body, the human body, the body is the host. All souls affirmed, Bala shahidna. Yes, we affirm your right to be worshipped, you as our creator. Now the question is, we don't remember that moment, but what we do have is a remnant memory in our fitrah. So Ibn al-Qayyim, he follows what Ibn Taymiyyah used to say and what others in the tradition used to say. They used to say that your fitrah is the remnant memory of the encounter. You don't remember all of it You don't remember, you can't remember physically because the brain and the soul were not together then. But there's some element in the soul that recognizes Allah is the one to be worshipped. Allah is all of these things, and they manifest through the fitrah to the rest of your body. So every cell in your body wants to connect with Allah, wants to love Allah, wants to, but it's so subconscious that it requires what? It requires a constant training of your mind to actualize that and to bring it to what? To bring it to the conscious realm. To bring it to your sense of awareness consistently. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions, هو الذي ينزل على عبده آيات. You want to connect to Allah? You want to love Allah? You want to connect with the awwal, the akhir, the zahir? Remember, it is He, Allah, who sends down clear signs, clear revelation, clear verses, bayinat, ayatin bayinat. What do these verses do? What's their purpose? لِيُخْرِجَكُم مِّنَ الظُّلُمَاتِ إِلَى النُّورِ. To take you out of darknesses into light. Darknesses. ظُلُمَات is in plural. So many different layers. Light is singular. There's only one light source, Allah. But when we talk about darknesses, there's so many. And one darkness leads to another. In every darkness, there's levels. There are levels within. وَإِنَّ اللَّهَ بِكُمْ لَرَءُوفٌ رَحِيمٌ. Now you might think Allah, this immense being. When you think of all these ayat, you think Allah to be this immense, incredible, powerful being. But Allah is saying, don't worry. When you connect with me and my signs, remember, deal with me, look at me, observe, have your interaction with me through the knowledge that I am the most subtle, the most merciful, the most gracious, the most merciful. I will deal with you not through my might, not through my honor, not through my izzah, my dignity, my power, my quwwah, not through my justice, because if He deals with us through justice, we're done. If He deals with us through His izzah, we're done. I will deal with you through my ra'fah, my rahmah, my compassion, my mercy, my grace, my love. So that's the defining principle, the defining light in our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The next ayah, ayah 10, Allah says, وَمَا لَكُمْ أَلَّا تُنْفِقُوا فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ وَلِلَّهِ مِيرَاثُ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ لا يستوي منكم من أنفق من قبل الفتح وقاتل أولئك أعظم درجة من الذين أنفقوا من بعد وقاتلوا وكلا وعد الله الحسنى والله بما تعملون خبير. So you say you believe, you say you follow the messenger of Allah, you want to have this connection with Allah. Where does it show? Why should you then not spend in the path of Allah? Not give in the path of Allah? So when it's time for all of us to contribute to protecting the ummah, to creating an infrastructure for the ummah, to creating some form of unity for the ummah, why are you all not working towards that? Why are you all not actively working towards that? This question applies today and applied to the ummah when they were what? When they were preparing for something like Al-Usra, the Battle of Tabuk. When they were preparing for this or that. So what's the context of Tabuk? If we say that this is talking about Tabuk, what's the context of Tabuk? The rumor came that the Byzantine or the Romans, right, are coming to attack. And if they come into the peninsula, it's going to be what? It's going to be game over. So Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, he was encouraged by the strategists with him, we need to actually go and meet them before they come into the peninsula. And if we're preemptive in doing so, it'll actually deter them. And that journey from Medina to Tabuk, it's 1,000 kilometers plus. 1,000 kilometers plus. And the army of the Byzantine soldiers, how much? We're talking about 100,000 plus. Right? It's a huge army. So Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam needs to prepare an equally large army. So he's asking everybody to pull the resources together. And how did they know all this? Remember, the way they knew this is, it was actually Khalid ibn al-Walid. It's quite an interesting story. Khalid ibn al-Walid, before, in Mu'tah, and even before, when he became Muslim, he led the companions to a campaign against the Byzantines. And he continued going until he actually confronted the Byzantines. And he realized that the Muslims at the time were maybe 1,000, 2,000 men. And the Byzantines were in the tens of thousands. So Khalid says, we can't retreat. If we retreat, they're going to pursue us and we're going to be dead. So the best thing that we can do is we can actually what? Shuffle. We're going to constantly shuffle the clothing that we wear. And we're going to send. So back then, imagine they had, let's say, this number of people as archers, this number of people as horsemen, this number of people as swordsmen. What they did is they tried to gather resources and pool resources. So they had enough swords for everybody, enough horses for everybody, borrowed, enough arrows for everybody. And what he did is he actually sent first the horsemen. Then they would go back and they would change their clothing, their attire. Then they would be archers. Then go back and they'd be swords people. So by constantly shuffling their clothing and their tools, the Romans had thought there's constant reinforcement coming back from Medina. So they actually what? They started to retreat. And then the Muslims, Khalid told them, don't retreat right away. I want you to retreat, but still put some men in the mountains and have them pop from time to time, so that they think that you're retreating only as to create a counterattack, that it's a trap. So imagine they would retreat, but then go on top of the mountain, and one guy would just pop up pretending, oh, he got caught. With his very vivid reds, So the Romans are like, these guys are not retreating. And as soon as we go, there's going to be counterattack. I see one guy, I know. So the Romans, even though they were, at least 10 times, the Muslims with Khalid, they left. And then Khalid is like, make a run for it, don't look back. Once there was 20 kilometers, 40 kilometers in between, they dashed it back to Medina. And then Khalid told the Prophet ﷺ and others, look, the eventual plan is for them to come. I know the way that war works. And if we don't build an army large enough to confront before they come, it's going to be game over. So this is the context. And in order for you to prepare an army that is between 10,000, 20,000, 100,000, depending on the numbers and the estimates, you need a lot of resources. You need to pull in. You need unity. You need a united front. So then the question that comes is, وَمَا لَكُمْ أَلَّا تُنْفِقُوا فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ. Why is it that you're not spending, you're not putting your effort in the path of Allah? وَلِلَّهِ مِيرَاثُ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. And to Allah is the eventual inheritance of everything in the heavens and the earth. Whatever you have with you in the heavens and the earth, Allah is eventually going to inherit it. لا يستوي منكم من أنفق من قبل الفتح وقاتل. And just like you cannot say the person who gave all that they got before the Fath of Mecca and after the Fath is what? The conquering of Mecca, Mecca becoming Muslim. You cannot say the person who gave everything up before Mecca was Muslim is equal to the Muslim who comes after and then invests. Because before Mecca was Muslim, there was no vision in mind, no promise in mind that your money would come back to you. It wasn't an investment, it was a charity. You give for the sake of Allah, expect nothing in return. But after Mecca became Muslim, Muslims became powerful. You fight with the Muslims, you can gain land. You fight with the Muslims, you can gain power, you can gain prestige, you can gain money, you can gain gold, social status, marriage, honor, mention in the Quran. We're part of a historic movement now. Everybody wants to be part of it. But before the Fath, it was like just a group of people. So when the vision, people with vision, not everybody sees their vision. So some people stay by the sides waiting. And some people with faith, they're not in it. They're like, I don't care if we win or not. I believe in Allah. I believe this is the messenger of Allah. I'm going to do everything that I can. End of discussion. I don't want anything in return. That's not the purpose. So same thing here. You can't equate those who are ready before Tabuk versus those that are going to come after. Because what's after Tabuk? The entire region becomes Muslim. Islam becomes the de facto way of life in all of these places around the world, not just the peninsula. So you can't compare those who gave all that they got before that moment versus what comes after. After, to be Muslim was what? Was an honor. Like, I want to be part of the Muslims. So before, you really had to believe to be a Muslim. But now, you don't have to believe fully. Why? Because you see it in front of you. The Prophet accomplished something. The Muslims accomplished something. So now you see a physical manifestation of that faith. You see Medina, you see the masjid, you see being built, you see the trade agreements, you see Egypt, you see Tunisia, you see Morocco, you eventually see Andalusia, you see this power and this power and that power and that power. You see Muslims going all the way to China. So now that you see it, it's easier to what? To believe in it. Like, imagine there's a business opportunity, but it hasn't really been built in the pre-built phase. It's going to be based on trust mainly. But once you see the thing being built, now your dividends are coming back 10, 15, 20%. Like, oh, I want in on this. And 5,000 other people have tested it and they're making money. Now you want to be in on it. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, belief happens what? During the early phase in which there's nothing to gain except the pleasure and the reward of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is Iman. Now ask yourself, sometimes we have these opportunities in the community and we only jump on them when there's actual self-gain. So let's say there's some orphan walks into the masjid or a widow walks into the masjid asking, can someone please help? There's no tax receipt. Your name is not going to go on a list. There's no recognition. Don't care. But then there's an opportunity where 10,000 people are contributing. No, I want to put in the $10,000. Now I want to put in the $50,000. Why? Because I'm going to get a specific treatment in the masjid this way. So our charity has become almost politicized. Our giving has become what? A form of self-promotion. Not everybody. I'm not saying this community. In general. And that's why there's this, I hope it's not true, but there's this, subhanAllah, notion that in many masajid, especially very powerfully built communities, when a community becomes like 200,000 people plus, especially communities in the States, right? And around the world, where now there's power associated, there's actual contribution to the broader society and engagement with the broader society. There's this trope that masajid become tax havens. So I want to get rid of, let's say I'm a multi-million-dollar business. I'm making, hundreds of millions of dollars, assets. So what I want to do is I want to make sure I lower my taxes. So instead of that going somewhere where I'm not going to gain much, no, I'm going to put that into the Muslim community. So that way I have leverage with the Muslim community. Right? I want to make sure that my father gets this funeral slot in the cemetery. And I want to make sure my mother is treated this way when the janazah happens. I want to make sure that when I walk into the masjid, there's a specific parking spot that I have reserved. So people do this. And we're talking about we're talking about today. Today. This is the way some donation money, charity money, has become as a tool for self-promotion and self-protection. So Allah is saying, are you doing it for the sake of Allah? Are you doing it because you love Allah? Are you doing it because you believe in Jannah? You believe in the promise of Allah? Or are you doing it because there's a self-promotion aspect that you only care about? So you can't compare the one who did it before it was cool versus the one who did it after. But guess what? وَكُلًّا وَعَدَ اللَّهُ الْحُسْنَى. But Allah promises good, promises the best to each of them. Allah's going to reward you. So even if you come in after, it's powerful, but your hope is for Allah. Now you're just easier to see. It's easier for you to see. Allah will still reward you. So Allah will not punish you because you're late to the game. Allah will reward you based on the intention regardless of when you come in. Whether you're at the beginning, at the end, if your intention is sincere, Allah promises you the best. وَاللَّهُ بِمَا تَعْمَلُونَ خَبِيرٌ. And Allah is fully aware of what you do. The last ayah, inshallah, because the next few ayat need to be understood together. So we're going to break at 11th ayah. And let's read it together and reflect, subhanAllah, on the meaning. مَنْ ذَا الَّذِي يُقْرِضُ اللَّهَ قَرْضًا حَسَنًا فَيُضَاعِفَهُ لَهُ وَلَهُ أَجْرٌ كَرِيمٌ. Who amongst you will give a good loan to Allah that Allah will multiply back and give to you? And Allah is the most, or وَلَهُ أَجْرٌ كَرِيمٌ. Allah promises a significant, a magnificent honor and reward, an award. So, you think about, why does Allah use the word loan? And one of the ways that you can think about this, imagine, subhanAllah, someone that you love. Maybe your aunt. Your aunt is, your aunt comes to you, or your mom comes to you, or your dad comes to you and says, "Can I please take a loan from you? I promise to give it back to you." But the fact that your father or your mother has to come to you and ask for a loan, that already tells you what? Already tells you that you've been what? You've been slacking. Your father should not be asking for a loan. Your father should not even have to ask you for money. Your mother should never have to ask you for a loan. أنت ومالك لأبيك. You and your wealth for your father. That's what we believe as Muslims. You should be always constantly monitoring your parents' situation to make sure that whatever they need, you fulfill before they even have to think about asking you for a gift, let alone asking you for a loan. That's the way it should be with our parents, with our loved ones. So what about the Creator, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? It's like, I'm constantly asking you to give, but you don't understand. So let me put it to you in simple terms. I'm not asking you to give to me. I'm asking you to invest in you, and by giving it to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you're not losing, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala multiplies it and gives it back to you in many ways. But let me use it in ways that you can understand. If you're struggling to understand that, let me speak it to you in terms of what? In terms that you understand as a business person. This is not a gift. This is not charity. It's a loan. It's a loan that I give you back in multiple ways, meaning think of it as an investment. I'll give you back the principal and much more in return. If it's sincere, that is what Allah is offering. So don't think when you're giving to Allah, you're doing Him a favor. Don't think when you spend in the path of Allah, you're doing, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala a favor. No, you're not. Who are you actually benefiting? First and foremost, you're benefiting yourself. Because whatever you give to Allah 700 times, if not more, comes back to you, if it's sincere. So Allah is saying, let me use, it's as if, I don't want to say Allah is saying, it's as if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, think about this from a monetary point of view, from your own contractual terms. This is not a gift. It's not charity in the way that you usually think about charity. This is what? This is a loan/investment, because you're going to get back from Allah much, much more. And who is Allah? Al-Awwal, Al-Akhir, Al-Zahir, Al-Batin. Think about the cosmic significance of that. And when Allah promises that much back in return in the dunya, Allah will allow you to see in the dunya 700 times more in the dunya, in your health, in your wealth, in your loved ones, in your ability to connect with people, in your ability to enjoy the Quran. So don't take the blessings of Allah for granted, and give whenever you have the chance to give from whatever Allah has given you, sincerely expecting nothing in return except from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. May Allah bless you, may Allah reward you, may Allah give you the best in dunya and akhirah, and may Allah keep us sincere, Ya Rabb. Ameen. We'll take any questions now if anyone has them, inshallah. I'll give you a minute to think, inshallah. No rush. Caring for your parents before they have to ever ask. Usually, when you're in a position of giving, it's very difficult to ask. So parents are by default in a position where they what? They like to always give. So when now they're faced with a difficulty in life where they have to ask, it's difficult to ask. It's difficult to ask. And certain people, it's even more difficult because of their nature. So just like, subhanAllah, the prophets had this quality where they wouldn't, you know, sometimes what people do is like, can I get you anything? A guest comes to you, can I get you water? Can I get you food? Can I get you juice? A step better than that is to actually do what? To bring over juice, water, fruits, whatever you have, all of it. You put it down and you say, whatever you like, please have. Whatever you don't like, no, yani, I understand. So it's one thing to ask, can I get you anything? It's another state to do what? To bring everything and they choose anything that they want. You see the difference there? So you're not putting them in a position where they have to ask, this is what's available, this is all that I have. You choose. And they derived this from Ibrahim alayhi salam. إِلَّا أَنْ جَاءَ بِعِجْلٍ. So Ibrahim didn't ask. He brought everything, he prepared the best and he gave it. And then when they didn't eat, that's when he says, أَلَا تَأْكُلُونَ? Are you not going to eat? So this is the etiquette of prophets and messengers. So the same thing with your parents. You don't wait for them to ask, because guess what? Most likely your parents are not going to ask. Especially if they're, if they're raised in a certain way where there's this like self-honor and integrity, and it's just difficult. So you want to be always constantly in touch with them to a point where you notice the need before it arises or as it's arising. So this idea of calling your mom and dad, hey, call me if you need anything. Just a phone call away. But you're not around. How am I gonna, how is the conversation gonna happen? You really think your mom is gonna pick up the phone, hey Ali, I'm having this issue, that issue? And then what happens? You go to your mom hasn't asked for anything, your dad hasn't asked for anything. Then you go spend 3-4 days with your family, like, oh my God, why didn't you tell me that the door is not fixed? There's this wall issue, there's a pest issue, there's this issue, there's that issue. Why didn't you tell me that there's an issue with the car? Why didn't you? Well, you couldn't do that. I'm here. And it's just difficult to ask. So when you're around, you'll notice these needs as they emerge, so that they don't have to ask. And that's a sunnah. That's what it means to have ihsan towards our parents, right? You want to get to that level with your parents. And with your spouses and your children as an extension. But generally, that's the level that we have with our parents. طيب. Yes? So if I understand the question, just so I can repeat it so everybody can hear it. Sometimes parents have expectations from one sibling versus others. So expecting this child to always give. And then the other child's like, okay, not much expectations. And then that can wear the person down over time. Or it can actually create arrogance of saying, I'm the one. So just like any interaction, we have to remember we're humans. Our parents are humans. And we make mistakes, they make mistakes. So if your parents are always depending on you, Allahu Akbar, you're so lucky. that your parents trust you to that extent, and they feel secure enough that they care to, or they're comfortable talking to you and asking. That's amazing. Alhamdulillah, it means that you built a secure attachment. That's great. And at the same time, remember, it's not you, it's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who's giving you. So be humble. Don't be arrogant because of it. And if it gets to a point where it's not sustainable, that's when you have to empower everybody else in that group to be able to give back and to be able to support. So like giving your brother like a nudge. Hey, we all have to step in. Let's step in, right? I can't do this alone. Communicating those feelings is good. But I would say you do it with the siblings. You don't do it directly to the parents because it's difficult. So try as siblings to all come together and to equalize. Because your parents is going to, certain ways set in motion, it's difficult to change. But you as siblings, you can negotiate that to make sure everybody steps in. Yes. So our sister is asking about the 8th ayah, where Allah says, وَمَا لَكُمْ لَا تُؤْمِنُونَ بِاللَّهِ وَالرَّسُولِ يَدْعُوكُمْ. Why do you not already believe in Allah while the messenger is inviting you to have faith? لِتُؤْمِنُوا بِرَبِّكُمْ. This question of who is the ayah talking to? Is talking to the believers to have actual belief? Is talking to the hypocrites to have real belief? Is it talking to the hypocrites to have any, or the unbelievers to have belief, period? This is actually going to be answered in the next few ayat. If you go to ayah 14, we'll discuss this next class. يُنَادُونَهُمْ أَلَمْ نَكُمْ مَعَكُمْ. The hypocrites will say, weren't we with you? Didn't we exist with you? So this is most likely talking about the hypocrites who were with the believers, but they actually lacked iman. So they showed up, but they were not present. Allah's telling them, why don't you actually believe? Or those who were, yes, they were there, but they weren't in it with their hearts. So because believers, they're in and out. They believe in and hypocrites, they're in and out. They believe and then they don't believe. They believe when it's convenient, or they manifest belief, pretend to believe when it's convenient and then when not. Versus someone who believes all the time, publicly, privately. So most likely it's talking about the hypocrites. And of course, as a second audience also, the people who don't believe at all. Right? Because I can say I'm a Muslim already, I believe, but do you really believe? Is there a little bit of hypocrisy in us? That's the question that we need to ask. Yes. Salam. The fact that you're asking the question of, how do I make sure that my giving is sincere? That's good. That's a good sign. So as long as you're constantly asking, how do I make sure that my charity is sincere? How do I make sure the minute you begin to worry is when it becomes so passive that you're just giving, oh, give me the tax sheet, move, khalas, that's it. You show up, here's the check, 20,000, make sure I get my tax sheet, here's the information, khalas, that becomes mechanical. The heart is not in it. So, and there's always going to be an element of, self-benefit that comes, but you, as to the best of your capacity, think about ikhlas, think about khalas. You're literally what? You're literally filtering something to take the purest and all the blemishes go. That's what sincerity is. Sincerity is to take your intentions and to filter them, so that way you take any blemishes out, and then the purest goes to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Inna Allah tayyibun la yaqbalu illa tayyiba. Allah is pure and only accepts that which is pure. So to the best of your capacity, think about what you're giving only for Allah. So for example, let's say you're asking for a tax receipt. I know what some people will do is they will say, look, I'm going to get the tax receipt. Whatever cuts and savings, I'm actually going to donate back. So I want to donate more and more and more. So they use it as a way to multiply and expand the investment. So I know people, when they raise their hand, they're like, you know what? people are struggling, I want to be the first to raise the hand so that others are excited and encouraged. And I know the campaign really needs it, needs some momentum. So I'll raise my hand with that intention. So guess what? They're raising the hand, even though they're publicizing it now, in the sight of Allah, they're getting immense reward. Because deep inside, they're not like, I want to raise my hand because I want to be the first. Everybody's going to, no, quite the opposite. You know, sometimes I know in our community, the first person to raise their hand, sometimes they're like, I really don't want to raise my hand. I really don't want to raise my hand. I know how this works, right? People are going to start thinking, oh, this guy has money, 20,000 means nothing. The hasad comes in, the envious, the eye comes in. So like, I don't want to, Allah, I don't want to, but ya Allah, please protect me. I'm doing this only for your sake. And then they raise their hand because they want to encourage others. So that's the process. Versus someone else who doesn't care, like, yeah, I got money. Everybody know that I got money. Lots and lots of money. So it's a different state of mind. And it all depends on the sincerity within here. Yes. When you give charity and you don't see immediately multiplied, is it a sign that it's not accepted? 3 things, Habibi. Number 1, you can give something and you don't see it because you're what? You're thinking in elements of now, today. You know, I know people that have gone through very difficult lives. Very difficult, where they give. And for 10 years, they didn't see anything. For 15 years, they didn't see anything. And then life opens up 15, 20 years later, and they look back and they're like, subhanallah, if only had I been more patient during those times. Because the sweet light at the end of the tunnel is worth it. And even beyond that, when the person who doesn't see anything in dunya sees what Allah has prepared for them in Jannah, they're going to feel bad about the fact that they even had the question of, hey, when is it going to happen? When is it going to come? So there's no doubt it's going to come. It's just a matter of when, and it's a matter of what is best for you. So sometimes whatever you're asking for, you're thinking you want, Allah doesn't give it to you now because you're not ready for it. So it's not a sign that it wasn't accepted. Sometimes it's actually a sign that it was accepted. Because Allah prepares it and makes it wait for you in Jannah when it really truly matters. Excellent. Okay, yes? Is that a form of test? Absolutely. The test after giving, right? Do you still trust Allah? How much more do you trust Allah? I actually know somebody, subhanAllah, like they gave something, alhamdulillah, for the sake of Allah, and it was significant for them at that time. And then they're like patient. But after a while, they became impatient. And soon after they became impatient, like it came. Whatever they were expecting came. And it came in exponential magnitudes. But then they started to think to themselves, maybe if I was a little bit more patient, I might have come back what? Even better. So after 5 years of patience, now for 1 year of impatience, it came that like imagine if I was patient just for 10 more years. You know what I'm saying? You know what it's like? Guys, it's like this. It's like imagine without the halal haram aspect, we're not issuing a fatwa, but you know, Bitcoin is becoming more and more common. Allahu alam, there's some fatwas say it's halal. I'm not going to speak on it this time, it's too early. But imagine you put your money in Bitcoin when it's what? When it's like 30 cents or $40 or $100. And because you're impatient, you pull your money out when it's like what? When it's like $10,000. And now that it's 100,000, at least Canadian, 134,000 Canadian, you know, if only what? If only I waited. And imagine when and if Bitcoin hits 1 million or 1.5 million as the Allah alam, then you 30 cents, I pulled out at 10,000, I thought I made some gains. If only I had waited. So the same thing, your investment with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's about what? It's about how much you're willing to actually wait. Do you really want it now? Because you're saying, Allah, I want it now. Okay, take it. But if only you had waited, what is with Allah is what? Khayrun wa abqa. And that's why some people, subhanAllah, as soon as they give to Allah, they don't think. That's it. It's with Allah. It's locked in forever. I don't think about it. I don't expect anything back in return. Done. To the point where like the person that you helped will come to you like, hey, remember 10 years ago you helped? I'm sorry, sure. Like, yeah, how can I help now? So they come and like, I want to thank you. Like, for what? You don't remember? And you don't want to make them feel bad that you don't remember because it's so significant for them, but you were doing it for the sake of Allah. So what you do out of respect is you do what? Well, I appreciate the fact that you've come. Jazakumullah khair. May Allah bless you. Keep dua. So that's being polite with Allah. You're supposed to give, expect nothing in return, delete, remove, pretend it didn't happen. That's where the reward is. And that's why when you live like that, you're like, I haven't really done much. You continue what I attempted to say. You continue to give more and more and more because you know with Allah is the ultimate best. Like He's al-awwal, al-akhir, al-zahir, al-batin. So, and that's why the companions used to worry. Their attitude is like, oh my God, why am I being given back now? When they started becoming rich and powerful, they panicked. They're like, the best of us didn't live to see this much power. Is it because Allah is rewarding us too soon? Or is this Allah's reward for them? You see? So we're seeing the blessings. These are not our blessings. These are the blessings of the people that came before us. So we have to use that to give back even more because we don't want to what? We don't want to get the false sensation that Allah is rewarding us for our efforts when our efforts are nothing compared to their efforts. And when their reward in the dunya was much, much, much less significant than what we are experiencing now. You see their way of thinking? Very different from the way that we think. Where we start thinking, if I have good, it means Allah is happy. And if I don't, it means Allah is sad, or Allah is upset, or Allah is disappointed. Of course, we don't ascribe human feelings to Allah, but that's the way people think sometimes. No. Allah can sometimes express His love to you by holding back from you to give you more opportunities to experience resilience. One of the hardest things to do is to walk into a masjid and to see that old uncle sitting there in the front row crying and crying and crying and crying. He doesn't know anybody else is in the masjid. It's just between him and Allah. He cries for like 40 minutes, doing dua, raising his hand, Ya Rab, Ya Rab, Ya Rab. And you can't do that. You know why? Because you have nothing wrong going on in your life here. You have health, you have wealth, you have children, you have everything. So you can't, like you try, but Allah has given you everything. So I remember like talking to someone, I walk into the masjid, I wish I can feel what they're feeling. I wish I can have those tears fall down in the way that I talk to Allah. I miss those days where I had nothing because my heart was so soft and easy to depend and easy to turn to Allah. But now there's so much security, but it's all false sense of security around me that I struggle to connect as much as I used to. Does that make sense? طيب. Wassalam. The closest is the throne. The way it's described, it's the closest is the throne. But like Ibn Abbas says, whenever you see a term used between something in the dunya and the akhirah, the only thing they have in common is the name. The concept is different. So it's as if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving you something that is as close as possible to your mind. When you think about a king who, there's usually an icon, an expression of power of that king. Some form of metaphor for power. In the worldly sense, a throne that the king sits upon or establishes himself upon, or if it's a queen herself, the monarch, the royal, to express power. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in a similar manner, the manifestation, his expression of power is the arsh, which is the most powerful of the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So you think about the angels, you think about the stars, you think about the planets, you have seen nothing yet. The galaxy, the Milky Way, black hole, all of these things there's nothing compared to the arsh. You can't even imagine the arsh. Does that make sense? Perfect. Yes. Yes. When do you decide to give up an argument? Ali ibn Abi Talib, he says, I have never regretted silence ever and leaving a bad situation ever. But I've regretted speaking multiple times. Meaning when you leave an argument, 99% of the time, you're not going to regret it later. You're going to be glad that you did. It's only in, like, say, 1% of the time where that person needs to be taught a lesson and you really need to intervene. But guess what? Wallahi, it's actually easy to teach people a lesson over time when things have calmed down and they're in a more receptive state. So I would tell you, generally in life, it's usually much, much better and more rewarding to leave arguments. Just let them be. Even if you lose a right? Yeah, I would say that, look, you have the right to get, Islam is very practical. So, العين بالعين والسن بالسن بس وإن تعفوا أقرب للتقوى. An eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. But if you overlook at the end, right? If you overlook, it's closer to taqwa. So you have the right to get your right. But if you choose to waive your right for the sake of Allah, that is ultimately best. So there's acceptable, but then there's ihsan. Ihsan is always say, Ya Rab, I leave it with you. Ya Rab, you take care of it for me. And that's usually after having really exerted effort. It doesn't mean you just sit there and become passive. No, but there are certain times where it just reaches a deadlock. It's just better to leave. It's better to leave. Right? Like this morning I got a question. Just before coming here, there's a business transaction that was agreed upon. And the guys show up, okay, here's the product. We came all the way, we shipped, we spent like thousands of dollars to bring in the product. And the guy's like, you know what? Not interested. And he's like, just fights, anger, I'm going to call the cops. Da, 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 da. So one of the guys who's involved with the business says, you know what, guys? Just let it be. Let the guy be. May Allah guide him. I'll pay for the costs, the damages. Just let it be. Right? Just let it be. He's not having one of those. It's just going to escalate and become ugly. And then after, when he calms down, I know that he'll come back and apologize, and only then we can sort things out. But at some time, like in some moments, someone has to intervene, and you know what? So just let it be. Let it be for the sake of Allah. Does that make sense? So some aspects of life, to really reduce the tension, you really need to just let it die. And if you just keep knocking on a bad situation, it's not going to go positively usually. And wisdom is to know when and when not to. طيب. Any other questions? Here and then here. Yes? Yeah. So the balance between taking action and taking things into your own initiative versus having tawakkul, trust on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The best example that I give of this is the example of the hijrah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. When he was migrating from Mecca to Medina, what did he do? He picked a companion. He had his food. Asma would deliver the food. She was pregnant. Nobody could suspect. He hid with Abu Bakr in the cave. The other side, he didn't go north. He went south. He hired somebody to cover the tracks. He hired a guide. He did a rehearsal of the route. He took the other route, an unusual route through the mountain instead of through the valley. All of these things that he did, plan. It's a perfect plan. But was that enough? No, he was still caught by Suraqa. But when he was caught by Suraqa, and when the mushrikeen in the cave, when he's in the cave, and Abu Bakr, he's like, if they look, they're going to see us. What did he say to him? لا تحزن, don't worry, don't be sad. إن الله معنا, Allah is with us. So you do the best you can to plan. but you know your plan is not enough. And when you know your plan is not enough to withstand after doing your best, that's when you say, Inna Allah ma'ana. Allah is with us. You don't just sit there from the beginning, Allah is with us. Yeah, Allah take care of it, Ya Allah. No. Like the Israelites with Musa. اذهب أنت وربك فقاتلا إنها هنا قاعدون. You go with your Lord, figure it out, you fight, and then once you save the, we're here. We're going to be waiting. So that's not the attitude. That's tawakkul. Tawakkul is to really do the best that you can. And knowing that your plan is not enough on its own, you still have to have trust in Allah to allow that plan to come to fruition. Yes?